Good Monday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for December the 19th. Today, we are beginning our final read for this year. So far, we've made our way through the Old Testament prophets. We have read through the entirety of the New Testament. We have read through so far two of the three wisdom works of the Old Testament: Job, Proverbs. And now today we're going to begin in Ecclesiastes, and over the next couple of weeks, we're going to take Christmas off as a catch-up day. But over the next couple of weeks, we will have 13 readings through the 13 chapters of Ecclesiastes. And I do hope that this will benefit you. I hope that everything that we've done this year in reading God's word together has been a great benefit to you. As we get into Ecclesiastes, we need to recognize that this is a very hotly debated book. Because there's just a lot about it that is somewhat uncertain. The authorship is uncertain. The way we are to read this work is uncertain. There seems to be a lot of paradoxes and almost conflicting language within this wisdom literature. So keep that in mind, that there's a number of different understandings of various things about this writing. There are different angles we can take that will lead us to somewhat different conclusions. There's different lenses through which we can read this book. So just keep that in mind and don't become frustrated. I've taught through Ecclesiastes before. And I've even preached, I think, a series through Ecclesiastes for a meeting somewhere, or maybe it was a young people study. It's tough. It's tough to really wrap your mind around exactly what is being taught within this text. So if you find yourself somewhat confused, don't worry. You're not the first person to have those feelings about this text. Well, let's just do our best to think through it and meditate upon these things. And we know that this wisdom that is delivered to us from God is beneficial to us and can help us to be great servants of his. Whenever we think about Ecclesiastes, as I mentioned, the authorship is uncertain. So the vast majority of people over time have probably recognized Solomon as being the teacher, the preacher, the Koheleth of this text. Although there is some evidence that might lead to some doubt in that conclusion. I'm neither here nor there on it. I don't really care too much. It doesn't change much for me, depending on who the author is. I simply recognize that the one who is writing is the Koheleth. That's the Hebrew word used here. It's translated in the CSB as teacher. It's translated in other translations as preacher. It is one who gathers people in order to speak to them and to impart wisdom upon them. One of the other questions is, well, how are we to read it? What is our understanding of what the Koheleth is doing within this book? Some would say that this is an internal debate within the mind of the Koheleth. It is pitting what he sees against what he believes and what he understands. It is kind of Jobish in that regard. The Koheleth sees certain things in life, and yet he knows what should be our mindset toward life, and he sees some incongruencies with that. He sees some difficulties between what he sees and what he believes. That's one way to approach this writing. Another way to approach this writing is the Koheleth trying to get somebody who is living out in the world to live for something that is more meaningful than simply living life under the sun, where we're born and we live and we die. This is challenging a person to pursue something that has more meaning than what is often described in this book as being hevel. The Hebrew word hevel, that's spelled H-E-B with an underline, which gives the V pronunciation, E-L, so H-E-B underline E-L. This word literally means vapor or smoke. It has the understanding of being temporary or fleeting, but also it can have another understanding of being an enigma or being a paradox. This word hevel is found 38 times throughout Ecclesiastes, if my counting is correct. And we see that a number of times here just within the first couple of verses of Ecclesiastes. Verse number 2 is absolute hevel, says the teacher. Absolute hevel, everything is hevel. CSB translates the word as futility, and as we go through the text, you'll see that mentioned, or you'll see that highlighted in green throughout the text. So anytime you see green, just keep in mind that is the Hebrew word hevel, and it is identifying something about this life that the Koheleth, the teacher, the preacher, is recognizing as being, again, vapor, smoke, temporary, fleeting, futile, meaningless, worthless. Anything along those thoughts is what you'll see highlighted in green. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get reading here in Ecclesiastes and have a thought or two at the end to give us something to think about as we begin our work week here on December the 19th. All right, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse number 1, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. So the words of the Koheleth, son of David, king in Jerusalem, absolute hevel, or translated absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility, everything is futile, everything is hevel. What does a person gain for all his efforts that he labors at under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets. Panting, it hurries back to its place where it rises. Gusting to the south, turning to the north, turning goes the wind, and the wind returns in its cycles. All the streams flow to the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are wearisome, more than anyone can say. The eye is not satisfied by seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Can one say about anything, look, this is new? It has actually existed in the ages before us. It has already existed in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of those who came before, and of those who will come after, there will be no remembrance by those who follow them. I, the teacher, the Koheleth, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem. I applied my mind to examine and explore through wisdom all that is done under heaven. God has given people this miserable task to keep them occupied. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun and have found everything to be hevel. I found everything to be futile, a pursuit of the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, see, I have amassed wisdom far beyond all those who were over Jerusalem before me, and my mind has thoroughly grasped wisdom and knowledge. I applied my mind to know wisdom and knowledge, madness and folly. I learned that this too is a pursuit of the wind, which, tying that in with verse 14, would tell us that is hevel. Verse 18, for with much wisdom is much sorrow. As knowledge increases, grief increases. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 1. The first few verses, verses 1 through 11, talk about the cycles of life and how things are going to continue going on, whether or not I am here. Generations come and go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets. It just keeps going in its cycle, and it did that before I was here. It's doing that while I'm here, and it's going to continue to do after I'm gone. The wind cycle is mentioned in verse number 6. The water cycle in verse number 7. Verse number 8 says all these things are wearisome, more than anyone can say. The eye is not satisfied by hearing or by seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Really, life just goes in cycles. Life is at least somewhat monotonous. And again, the earth and its cycles and its operations, they're going to happen whether or not I'm here or not. And going on from there, in the last few verses, I think the Koheleth is recognizing that even though he has so much wisdom and knowledge, again, that sounds a lot like Solomon, even though this individual has so much wisdom and knowledge, he recognizes that this wisdom and knowledge is limited in power, because no matter how much wisdom, no matter how much knowledge he has, he's not going to stop the sun from rising. He's not going to stop the generations from coming and going. He's not going to be able to catch the wind. He's not going to be able to stop the water cycle. Everything that he has is futile, is hevel in regard to the natural processes of this earth. There is nothing new under the sun. And to some people, that reality can be very frustrating. It can be very frustrating to some people, the fact that their knowledge and understanding and power is very limited in the grand scheme of things. I think that's because some people really like to be in control. Some people really like to have a say in what's going on in this world. Yet we need to recognize that we are not the gods of this world. There is but one God. Yes, we are his representatives, and yes, we have been put here to rule and have dominion over this creation, but we only have as much power as he has given us. And he has not given us absolute power. And I need to be humble and to recognize my position in that. I need not be frustrated whenever all of my wisdom and power and understanding is limited. I need to realize that I'm a part of this creation as well. Again, a very special part of it. But I need to recognize that God has created this world to operate in certain ways, and they're going to operate. They have operated before I was here. They're operating the way they're supposed to while I am here. And once I'm gone, guess what? They're going to continue on. And to the Koheleth, that's kind of a bummer thought. Man, I guess I really don't matter all that much, do I? Again, going back to verse number 2, absolute futility, says the teacher, absolute futility, everything is futile. What I do, who I am, seems futile. Seems not to be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Am I humble enough to accept that? It's kind of a question that we're left with here. We might pursue all wisdom and knowledge. And in fact, what's interesting is we are encouraged in Proverbs to pursue knowledge and to pursue wisdom. But even with that, we have to recognize the limits of such. Are we okay with that? Can we live knowing that this world is going to continue to operate as God has determined for it to operate? Am I willing to humble myself and simply be a part of that and recognize that I don't control it? Those are a couple of thoughts I'm left with here as I think about Ecclesiastes. If you have any thoughts or comments about this text, please feel free to leave that in the comments section. Love to have a discussion with you about that. And I do hope you have a great rest of your Monday. Please, I would ask that you remember my Uncle Randy, who is having his heart procedure this morning. He's going to have his, I'm pretty sure he's either having the aorta or the aorta valve replaced. That'll be taking place at Park West this morning. Please be praying for him and my Aunt Keva. I know she would appreciate that greatly and has been appreciative for the prayers that you have offered on their behalf up to this point. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday, everyone. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, reading through Ecclesiastes 2, and I hope you'll be able to tune in at that time. Take care, and God bless.